I guess the subject is life in the big city being Chicago. Or perhaps more specifically, a life in the black ghetto of the big city, which is Chicago. Many of these creative men, young girls too, members of what are known as gangs. And Henry Jordan, Allen Evans are now attending Dartmouth University.
College.
Dartmouth College, that's right. Mm-hmm. Dartmouth College is a whole history. So where do we begin with Henry Jordan and Allen Evans? Henry, you're going to Dartmouth now.
Yeah.
And you're going back there.
In September. Well, this month.
And you also were the founder of the Vice Lords.
Well, the Vice Lords started off with about 20 guys. 20 guys, and out of the 20 guys that started the club in 1959, only 2 of them are living. 6 of them in the penitentiary, and the rest of them are all dead, victims of police brutality, I guess. And it's in between that time, from 59 up until now, I've seen a lot of bright, brilliant young men who could have been bright and brilliant in contemporary society destroyed in the ghetto because they didn't have a chance or a channel to express their talents or didn't have any capacity to develop their creativity. And I think it's a bad kind of thing where you have all this talent locked up in a little area on the west side from Jewtown all the way up to K-Town with gangs and police confrontations, having to steal and rob to live and things like that, where maybe a hustler on a street corner could become a good entrepreneur if he was put in a big business situation. So a lot of people are sort of die on the wayside trying to make it, just trying to survive. They don't ever have a chance to be recognized as people or as potential assets to society.
What about yourself, Alan? You talk about Brown's book, his experience, your experience of what Henry Jordan just said.
I think I could write a book like that. Sometimes I think about the life that I've led, and like you tell other people about it, and they say, "Wow, that's unbelievable."
Once you start thinking about it, it is kind of unbelievable.
And you write down an autobiography and you start putting this stuff down. You say, "Yeah, and I was arrested for this, and I saw this guy get killed, and I saw this happen, I saw that happen." You say, "This is not real." I couldn't have done all of that. And you think about the house you lived in. You start describing these kind of things, these conditions. So that's not real. Nobody can live in a situation like that.
And that's something. After at 20 years old, out in the streets, you're an old timer. You're an old man, because usually people don't make it to 20 years old. You live to maybe about 18, and if you're not in the penitentiary, you're dead. Somebody's killed you from trying to rob them, or the police have shot you one way or another. And we're old timers, despite the fact that we're 20. We're not 20. I'm 22.
22.
I'm 22.
You're 22.
23.
You guys are really veterans.
Yeah, we're old men.
My God, you're old men.
Yeah.
It's tough. I'm sorry.
Another point that we brought out is about this vicious cycle that you get into in the ghetto. See, the average guy in the ghetto, I don't believe is psychotic. I don't believe the people there just want to steal and rob and stuff just to be doing it. It's really out of necessity. And I really have a lot of trust. I was in reform school for about 7 months, and I really felt at ease. I could sleep every night. I never worried, because I know that everybody there, it was a couple of psychotic people there, but most people there were there because they were forced to do something. And with people like this, as long as they had what they needed, you don't have any trouble. You felt at ease. You can leave your stuff around, nothing will happen to it. But most people have the impression that because you come from a ghetto situation, they're always, kind of apprehensive towards you. They always watch themselves. They don't know if you'll just hit them in the head or something. They think you're some kind of beast or something, and they don't want to let you see the money because they think you may
take it or something like that.
Yeah, it's really pathetic. But the thing is that the people there aren't psychotic. It's just what they have to do to live. And sometimes I think about the things that I've done, and I say, damn, it's crazy. You do things that it seems like you don't want to live.
Self-destructive.
Right. You fight with people.
And I think a gang fight is really, that's as close to death as you could possibly get, because you're really asking for it.
Yeah.
When you go down in the neighborhood with a bunch of fellas, and you don't know who's waiting down there for you, and what kind of guns they got, and you're just going to run down there. But I think the thing is, you sort of perceive your environment and figure out what you have to do within that context to live, and it encompasses a lot more than getting a job and going to work every day. And I don't know, I think I've lived in the streets from the time I was 12 years old, not out of choice, but out of necessity, and that the family structure broke down. I had to live in the street. And it's a situation that most people are forced into and that they really don't want to be in. To elaborate on what Tanya was saying somewhat, that I was able to trust, the crooks in the street a lot more than I was able to trust the honest people, in quotation marks, It was easy to get along with it, with them because you knew what they do and they'd tell you exactly what they had to do in certain situations. And you had a sort of trust, that honor among thieves, I guess,
No, I was going to ask, it would be good if we start at the beginning. Who are Alan Evans and Henry Jordan? Here are two young guys now attending Dartmouth, 22, 23, attending Dartmouth. Both of you were born here in Chicago, in the West Side Ghetto.
Right. I was born Cook County Hospital, October 5th, 1944. We lived down on Laughlin and 13th. I think I was small.
Yeah, they call it Jewtown.
Yeah, Jewtown. Around the South Water Market.
Not in a derogatory way toward people who are Jewish, but it was just around the water markets and around Maxwell Street, so they just call it,
I think
Jewtown.
we should point this out to listeners. The word Jewtown you will hear referred to quite often, you have by black people, particularly poor black people. It's the whole matter of experience. It's an area in which many merchants happen to be Jewish, and so it's called Jewtown. This is a word I've heard ever since I was a little kid, and so this is a reference term. But go ahead. I'm sorry. See, you were talking about...
It's not a derogatory kind of thing, like you call...
That's the thing. But
Jewtown,
in Chicago, I think around in general area, if you say Jewtown, they say, oh, Maxwell Street. They understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But when you're away from Chicago and you say, well, I used to live in Jewtown, like I said,
people,
Jewtown.
they kind of get an attitude like, I think you're talking about them.
But anyway, to get on, I lived on my earlier part of my life was in Jewtown. I remember it was, I guess, a typical black life. We stole from South Water Market. It was a pretty good life. You got all the vegetables and things you needed. I mean, you really stayed healthy.
How old were you about?
Oh, 5 or 6. Then we moved out west about then, but we got a lot of good vegetables and things like this. And schools, they didn't really care about you going to school or anything, so you had a lot of free time to play around if you wanted to. So it was a pretty easy life down there, Nobody worked, and stuff like this. But I think one thing bad that happened to me was that I didn't learn the difference between, say, right or wrong. Morals, I didn't really have a good set of morals.
Or a set of values, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, because, you didn't have anything to base them on. You didn't have this job. You didn't have the... Whenever I saw a policeman, it was always in a bad way, I never saw the guy helping the guys across the street, This is a hell of a thing. And when you went to school, the guy at the school, he wasn't there to keep other people out, Every time I saw one, he was always there with his club, but it was always for me, So I never really had any respect for the law.
I think about it, you get sort of a negative attitude against the whole system, like the teachers are there to brainwash you, the policemen are here to beat you up, and everything is alien, and you're sort of just shut off from the world, and the world becomes a kind of enemy to you,
Yeah. It makes you very rebellious, and I always liked the truth. I think I've always liked that, and it really makes me mad when people lie, And I got in a lot of fights about that, and we moved from Jewtown. We moved out west, I moved on Kids in 15th, Lawndale area. And I started going to St. Agatha's Catholic school. Pretty good school. I learned a lot there, but I was bad, I fought all the time. And so, when you fight, you always get extra attention. I had to stay after school, so I read more than the average kid there, staying after school and stuff. But my fighting got the best of me, I guess. And they kicked me out, It was pretty disgraceful getting kicked out of first grade. And so I went to Lawson then. That's on Holman and 13th. Lawson was pretty much more like me. The neighborhood had really changed then. And it was more, black kids who liked to fight. Everybody was mad. Nobody really knew what they were mad at, but everybody was mad. And everybody was just fighting.
Yeah, I went to Lawson too, and you play in the playground, and you get a whole bunch of guys together, and somebody else will get a bunch of guys together. You just fight each other all through the play period, run around the playground and whatnot.
It was really weird. I wasn't real heavy, not a philosopher or anything, but I used to sometimes sit back on the fence, and say, damn, what the hell's going on? Everybody's fighting and stuff, and you could just see it, it's pleasure. People would get pleasure, and I said, damn, what kind of stuff is this?
And, and that's something that goes on until the point where you get to where you start gangs, and the same kind of misguided frustration goes on, Like when we thought about starting the Vice Lord, it was because the police used to come around on 16th Street, and they were pulling this convention action on us a long time ago before Mayor Daley decided to put the police on the demonstrators. Yeah. And they'd come around and just get out of their cars and bust heads at will, And there were usually a lot of guys around there. And we started identifying with a common enemy, the police. So we started a group to protect ourselves against the police. And it caused a lot of controversy. I think, as a matter of fact, I went to jail 3 times. I went to reform school 3 times, having battles with the police and whatnot, being in the Vice Lords. And this thing still goes on in certain situations and instances. And people get on the gangs in the way they are, but I think they can be beneficial if they give them some proper direction, and if they get the feeling that they're not, living in an alien world, and they do have a part to play, because a lot of talent is wasted.
Yeah, I think the gangs are just like, they are. They call Boy Scouts. Let your son join a gang. Boy Scout, but the ghetto gang serves a different purpose from that Boy Scout gang. I guess if you had money and stuff and you had recreational facilities, the Boy Scouts would really be out of sight, But if you haven't got these things, then you need a gang, because you get all this prestige. You got prestige for belonging to it. You got security. And like you saying, the police respect you. If they know that you will fight them back, they'll treat you better. They'll make concessions with you. They'll give you breaks. And
the respect for what they think is power and the contempt for what they think is powerless.
Right. I think so. Exactly. I think this is exactly it. Because when the Vice Lords got together and the police came around, we burned up 2 police cars, and they used to patrol the area and just come straight through it. They got to the point where they'd go around down Central Park, up Ogden, and down Pulaski, and around Roosevelt, and that was a complete square, and they never came in that area, and they never bothered anybody. And they got to the point where they started giving us dances on the 3rd floor of the police department on Fillmore, until we wrecked it, until we wrecked the police station, and they cut it out. But there was a different light that the police had on us since we had gotten together.
Yeah. And then, an example of this, to the opposite, was I remember I got out of St. Charles, reform school, and I came home. I was really gonna be a good guy, And so I was on around 13th place. You know how people just mill around? About 3 of us out there. And so I was talking to a girl upstairs, And so some cops pulled up, We hadn't done anything. So the guy got out, get up against the wall, So, if you're away from the city a while, you forget how you're supposed to act, And so the guy said, get up against the wall. So I said, okay, So he said, open up your feet. So the cat kicked my feet, Well, I had new shoes on. They were shy. I said, hey, man. I said, don't kick my feet. So the guy said, oh, you don't like that, huh? I said, no, So he put his hand under me as I was against the wall, like so. And just started to pound me here, all in the face and stuff, And I was just seeing stars, and here I was like this, and I know this guy's over here with a gun, and here this guy over here beat me in the stomach and in the face, And he said, you mind if I kick your foot now? I said, yeah, you can kick my feet if you want, It was nothing I could do. And then, they said, oh, you smart, huh? So, they grabbed me, threw me in the car, and took me down to the police station, And I hadn't done anything, So, and they didn't really want me for anything. They just brought me down, and they brought all 3 of us down, and we sat in the room, and they said it was supposed to be a gang fight that night. That's when they brought on Lewis in.
Yeah.
So they just picking people up, bringing them in, saying, where's the gang fight? And everybody said, well, we don't know anything about a gang fight. So they sit you in the chair and start beating you, and people just started lying. It's going to be on 16th, and, it's going to be between the Cobras and the Vice Lords and the Mafia. They tell them anything they want to hear just to, get out of there, And I guess it sounds good when they write it down. Yeah, we caught some gang members. I wasn't in no gang. I just got out of reform school, took us there, beat us up and stuff. And so this cat had beat me all in the face, so I left, because they had told me the stuff about my rights, And I went to the desk, they said, okay, get out, I went to the desk and I said, look, this guy beat me up, I want to sign a complaint. And the guy looked just like he was looking right through me. Just looked right through me, and just kept on, yeah, son. Answering the telephone, I was just talking, I said, look, man, I'd like to file a complaint, And I really felt foolish. I was running around, I said, hey, man, this cat jumped on me. They just ignored me. Yeah. For about 15 minutes, I tried to tell somebody what had happened, and so I just walked out.
That's something
people
become kind of shocked when you're talking about police brutality in the ghetto. But I think that they have target practice for new policemen.
Yeah.
Right in the ghetto. As a matter of fact, they send all the rookies there and tell them to just cut loose whenever they want to. And I think this thing happened at the convention. Expose of what the police do to people, when it happens, when you can really feel it, then you can understand and relate what we're trying to say. It really makes a difference.
Of course, what I suppose it brought forward here a case of whiteheads being hit on TV, of course. But can I ask a question? What about black cops? Is there a different attitude here?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
I think that black policemen are working for the same, police system that the white policemen are working for. And as a matter of fact, black policemen are sometimes worse than white policemen.
Right. Right. See, the thing is that people, I think prejudice is a luxury. It's a luxury that poor people really can't afford. Organizations determine what men do. And I think if you look at any organization, what it stands for, you look at the man that works for it, and that's what he's going to do, i.e. the police department. And these guys are the enemies in the ghetto. I've seen more. This was a black cop that beat me up.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I got in the police picked us up once. We were at a club meeting, we were leaving a club meeting, and they just picked up all the leaders, the gangs. And they got together with us in an alley, And the guy took off his gun, and said, since you're the first lieutenant, I'll fight you fisticuffs, without a gun. So I beat the guy up, I was about 14 years old, and I beat this bad cop up that goes around slapping everybody in the face. Okay, about 2 days later, they raided my house and, threw dope all over the place.
Typical fashion.
Yeah, a normal way that you get arrested. They threw dope all over the place and planted guns, and I stayed in St. Charles for like 11 months, for that. So it's not clean politics that they play.
This is the thing, if you're in the ghetto, and you get any kind of rep and a cop comes close to you, you got to start screaming, get a big crowd around you, and get your hands up, and don't let this cat put his hands in your pocket, because he's going to put some dope in there, put a knife in there or something,
and they will really, put a plan on
they'll drive up to you if you're on the street and throw some knives out on the street and jump out with their guns.
Is it as crude as that?
Yeah,
it's true as that.
It's crude. I mean, it's bad.
They don't have any finesse whatsoever. I mean, you just don't have no power. They do anything to you they feel like.
Thinking about some of the members you're talking about, the vice lords, what's happened to them. I imagine a great many members of the group that you formed were guys like this, weren't they?
There were a number of them that went to the penitentiary, that every time that they came out and tried to make an adjustment, they were slapped in the face or pushed aside, that nobody showed any interest in them. And since nobody showed any interest, they felt that the way that they were going was apparently the right way, because any other way they tried never worked.
Right. I think that it's a thing that I think a man comes to a point, and when he reaches that point, he has to make a decision as to what he's going to do. But it has to be somebody there to help him do that thing. I don't think a man can do it by himself. When you say, I want to go, somebody always has to say, well, here's the vehicle, or I'll tell you the right route. You've got to have that help.
I think it goes along with the thing, no man is an isle. And you come to a point, like I did, when I kept thinking about all the gang activities I had, participated in, and hustling in the street and having to steal and rob. And then you have to come to grips with life altogether from your particular frame of reference. And you have to look towards some future goal and, wonder and look and retrace the steps that you've gone already in your mind, and ask yourself as to whether or not this is going to take you where you really want to go, if you want to go anywhere at all. And there has to be someone around to give you some kind of direction,
right, and show you that it is some place to go,
and give you some belief that you can make it if you try.
Yeah. Now, see, another thing is that we don't want to seem like we're saying, well, now we've made it. Now we know that everything is beautiful and we don't have anything to worry about. We still have these frustrations that we had before. this can kind of go into how the foundation year started.
Sure.
I think we both worked at a social agency, and we worked around the guys, teenagers, trying to keep them cool, more or less. That's what we were, a buffer between the society and the gangs. And things got out of hand. I think it was 65.
Yeah, it wasn't 65 when they had 66 when they had the first riot on the west side.
Yeah, and they tore things up quite a bit. And so, we were around there then. So we talked to a lot of people after that. Everybody said, well, what's the problem? Bankers would ask you, what's the problems? These people that wouldn't finance a home there but would finance a Cadillac, and they'd ask, what's the problem? Stuff like this. And so, we tell them what the problem was, and they say, oh my God, I wouldn't believe that, stuff like this. So anyway, we met this old crazy hunky.
This is what we first when we first met him,
Yeah. And DeWitt came in, he talked a whole lot of crazy stuff. He said about
how there were chances for you to make it, and all you got to do is just lift yourself up, and you could just make it if you wanted to. That the opportunities were there, and this was really humorous. We laughed.
We didn't believe it.
Thought he was, like Tiny said, a crazy hunky, in a humorous kind of fashion. We never took it really serious that there were any opportunities, because this is just the way it was in the street. You don't, there are no chances. Nobody makes it.
And so we talked to DeWitt. We talked a lot. At first we were kind of like, at ends with each other, and then we talked. Got closer and closer. And
you're talking about DeWitt Bell, who was the executive secretary of Foundation Years.
Right.
We'll talk about that group in a moment.
Right. And so we talked to DeWitt. And we got on school one day, and we talked about how we wasn't prepared, and how we couldn't make it in a school, that we had to take the same test as other people had, took to get into it. And so DeWitt said that he had went to Dartmouth, and that he was going to try to talk to somebody and see if we could get up there, and he'd try to figure out a program or something, So we said, okay, DeWitt, I'm fine, pat him on the back.
Just push it off as another thing white people tell you to pacify.
Because the thing was, I had never heard of Dartmouth. Never heard. I was going to Central White down here in Wacker. And he's telling me about it. I said, man, I got another half a year, and I'll be finished with it. I get a 2-year degree. What would I leave a 2-year degree for and go to some college up in the woods? I didn't know anything about Dartmouth. So he said, well, this is a better school. He talking. I said, okay. So things went on, and DeWitt went around, and he, asking here and begging there, and he came up with enough money.
For 4 scholarships.
Right.
Yeah.
And 2 for you. Yeah. One for Henry Jordan, one for Alan Evans, and 2 more for 2 other guys.
Right. Yeah. So Tiny and I took the scholarship.
Yeah.
I guess we were called dreamers or foolish guys, because taking a chance like this is something that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Everybody laughed.
Yeah. When you're really you're in the spotlight already, and you've made it in terms of the ghetto, and now you're going to just cop out and go somewhere else. Everybody was really looking at us and waiting to laugh at us when we came back as failures. I think this is essentially what they were doing. They were waiting to, to really laugh and tell us, "How you fool, you chump, you did what the white man said and you blew."
Because everybody told us you're making a terrible mistake. If you leave this place, you're gonna be sorry.
See, but I was thinking that, I imagine both of us were thinking that it works 2 ways. That if this thing would go through, then I think we'd open up some channels of communication. I had this vision, this dream in my mind that if it did go through and we were successful there, that we'd open up some channels of communication that, that the ghetto could relate a lot more to the middle class white society, and the black and white could relate too. And I think this is the most,
by the way, middle class learning from the ghetto. I think we ought to get that part straight too. We always think of integration as people ghetto becoming middle class.
Yeah, I think
that isn't the point at all. It's learning.
That's sort of a cultural exchange program.
Exactly.
Because there is a difference, and I don't think one's better than the other. They're different, and both of them have a lot to contribute to people.
Now, almost cultural, someone called cultural pluralism. The idea of two cultures.
Wait, let me bring the point.
Go ahead.
Now, let's not say that one's not better than the other.
No, I'm not going to say. I'm talking in terms of
psychologically.
The psychological development that you can get if you come out. But the chances of you coming out of the ghetto are a lot slimmer than you coming out of the middle class. That's true.
Yeah, it is. The ghetto is bad. Believe me. I mean, physically speaking, you can. There's no such thing as a comparison between the two. There's no such thing. It's terrible.
And I don't think that you can bring middle class values and superimpose them over ghetto over ghetto mentality and just erase them. Because I think coming from the ghetto, you do have something to contribute. That's a lot.
Yeah, but
that's very beneficial. I'm talking about from experiences and whatnot.
Yeah, but man,
but the material.
Oh no, I think what Henry. I don't think I think Alan thinks we're misinterpreting it, that the ghetto life is a beautiful and lovely life.
No, I'm not trying to illustrate that.
But I'm talking now about middle class values themselves. Who said that is so great to where we are today? You see, so therefore maybe there's a learning at least of one human relationships in one community can be learned by another.
Yeah.
It's not materially, of course, horrible. No one denies it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you were talking.
Okay. No, go on. That's what I said.
Yeah, and that your experiences from the ghetto, you have something to contribute. And I don't think that middle class society is all perfect, and there's something you should aspire to get to.
This leads to a question where I ask you about Dartmouth experiences, courses you would take. When you came back to the ghetto, I'm thinking now about your friends and others. Here you were in Dartmouth. That comes a big question now. What are their feelings?
See, well, like we said before, we were either, if we would not have made it, that we would have been laughed at, And since we didn't come out on the short end of the stick, now everybody on the west side knows something about Dartmouth, whereas before they didn't know anything at all about it.
Yeah.
And I think that they're more receptive toward going to school now, and they feel that this is a new way out. See, because when you're old guys like Tiny and I, you're looked up to in one way or another. You're either looked up to by a younger guy
Alan was tiny.
You're either looked up to by a younger guy who wants to bump you off and get a reputation for having beat up one of the old bad guys, or you either got something on the ball and you got young guys admiring you and wanting to be like you. You're sort of an example then. Since we haven't got bumped off yet, I guess we're sort of examples now.
Yeah, and another thing is, see that you have to really wonder or care what these people think. See, I don't care. Really, I don't care. When we went up to school and we came back, we didn't go around and say, "Hey, man, we go to Dartmouth." Can't say what you been doing. Sometimes I say, "I've been in jail. I just got out the army." I try to avoid talking about school. And then if they get on to it and say, "Yeah, what you doing?" I say, "I'm going to school." I say, "Where so and so?" I say, "Dartmouth." 20 minutes to half an hour later, they know what Dartmouth is. And then they say, "Well, how'd you get up there?" And so and so. Another 20 minutes, a half an hour, and they say, "I'd like to go there too, if so and so, so and so." And then that's how the foundation year we started to test guys. We got guys interested in going into this thing, because of what Henry and I had done. And then they took some tests. We're taking 5 guys up with us in a couple of weeks. They're going back to Dartmouth with us. They tested about, I think, 34 guys.
Yeah, I think it was about 50 guys they tested.
What sort of test?
These are they're not the normal ACT and SAT test scores. They're essentially intelligence tests, and adaptability tests, and psychology tests.
To see if they could adjust to it.
And I think they're very good because we're not test orientated.
I was going to say I'm suspicious of tests, Jim. That's why I asked what sort of tests. These tests didn't have to do with book experience.
No,
it had to do with something else.
Right. See, the thing is that we haven't really changed. I think that I would rob tomorrow or hustle tomorrow. If I was kicked out of school and I couldn't get a job, I'd do the same thing I was doing before because I want to live. That's all. I just want to live. And I think it's a human thing. I think all humans are like this.
A desire to survive, I think it is.
Yeah. See, there's still a question that still comes to my mind is how come where was it in school or where was it on the streets that you got the feeling that there's another way, that there's a window that's open, there's another way than, the one you might have gone to?
I tell you, one night we robbed a man. Me and about 6 other guys, we robbed a guy. Now, it's a lot of details to this thing. Because, sometimes you say that you're really not guilty, and then other times you say that, you're guilty. But this time, I won't even go into that. No. I'll just say I'm guilty. And, no, I don't want to say I'm guilty. I'm saying I was a victim of circumstance. But see, I think this was really the change because I really hadn't done that much, And I got picked up, And so this guy that we had robbed, in quotation marks, We took $2.67 from this guy. And this guy had torn up a leather coat I had on and my hat. You know, he had really beat me up. And I said, look, man, why don't you go ahead? You know, these guys probably robbed. You know, I'm trying to help him out. This guy was tearing my stuff up, you know. And we got $2.67 from this guy. I got locked up and I got beat all night long. At Fillmore Police Station, they beat me all night.
How old were you then?
I was 17 then. They beat me all night. They really swelled my face up. They swelled my face up so bad that they couldn't take me to court. You know, they take you to court the next day. They couldn't take me to court. So they took me to about 3 or 4 different police stations. And then they took me to the county. And a week later, I went to court and they told my mother where I was at, you know. So I laid up, you know, for about a week. And I looking at little slits, you know, face all swollen up. I mean, these cats would just beat me, you know. And I didn't have no power again, you know. I said, damn, man, I can't take this. You know, how long can I live like this? You know, every time I walk outside, you know, and go before the judge, you know, and the cat said, because I really did have a legitimate excuse. You know, it was justifiable to take this guy $2.67. But I couldn't tell the judge. I mean, you stand before him, you start talking. The guy said, oh, you don't like to work, huh? You like to take people's money. I said, no, man, I didn't want to take this guy's money. I said, let me explain. What do you mean, let you explain? I'm in court, and this guy asked me, what do I mean, let me explain? I said, damn. So the guy said, listen, he said, come over here. He said, if you tell me you did it, I'll let you go. But if you tell me you didn't do it, you're going to jail. And he said, you know you can get 3 to 5 for this? And I said, man, 3 to 5. And he said, yeah. And we didn't have anything. He said, you know, it was just, you know, strong arm. He said, yeah, and you had a gun on this guy, too. And he asked the guy, he said, didn't he have a gun on you? And the guy said, yeah. You know, it was like that. I said, man, okay. You know, he said, I did it. And he said, okay. Said,
you answered what you wanted him to answer.
Yeah, you know, and to make it easy for him, you know. And he said, okay. He told the judge just sit back, man, this is really hypocrisy. I just come in and this guy tells the judge this, and the judge said, okay. And he said, a year's supervision, go out. I went out, another guy came in, you know, he said, go see your supervision officer. I went to see the guy, I said, how you doing? He said, how you doing? He said, don't get in no more trouble, and I'll call you. A year later, he sent me a piece of paper, said, okay, you know, you're through.
You know, and that's something like, I don't know, I never witnessed that.
Yeah,
I never experienced
the
that.
thing that when I changed is when I was in this county jail. I only stayed there 21 days, but it seemed like a couple of years. And I laid on this bunk. See, I was going to Harrison then too. You know, really a fluke, because I was going to school. It was in January. You know, you pass in February, right in the middle, just before the finals were happening. And I laid up there, you know, and I started thinking about how stupid I was. And I saw all these cats around me, and these guys would come back, you know. Yeah, man, 10 to 20. You know, 20 years, 2 to 10. All of these ridiculous figures, you know, for little petty things, you know. You won't believe the guys in there for stealing loaves of bread, and they were getting 6 months and stuff. I mean, this guy hungry. A guy to steal bread, you know, he got to be hungry. Give him 6 months, you know. Guys getting 5 years for little, you know, just all kind of stuff. I can't take this. You know, it's got to be another way. You know.
Yeah, I had more extreme examples to indicate to me that the way I was going wasn't bad, because, like, my friends were getting shot, you know, by policemen in the back and in the head. We were down at our Pep's house one night, and the police came in. They just busted in the joint and started shooting, and they killed Glenn, shot his head off with a sawed-off shotgun. You know, and this is where, you know, force meets force, and we didn't have enough force, and I guess that was the case. And as I started looking back on it, I saw that, you know, if I wanted to live, you know, I'd have to change my course one way or another, and that these direct confrontations with the police all the time wouldn't work. And this was almost, unless you got beat up, you'd really have to fight the police. And we were in a situation where we were always fighting the police. And since they had killed, you know, a lot of the guys that I had come up with, I started thinking about that. In relation to my life, you know, that I thought was pretty good, that I wanted to preserve, and I just started thinking about another way, you know, that it just didn't pay off. You know.
But see, when I met DeWitt, I hadn't changed. I mean, I was more or less thinking about destroying this system. I mean, I was looking at it. We had marched down here to the Board of Education.
Right across the street, as a matter of fact. And
Yeah,
talked
man,
about
and-
changing the schools. We tried to get in touch with Redmond. He wouldn't talk to us. And we were trying to do something constructive. Now, the year before that, we started a riot. That was bad. Okay, so this, in that particular year, we were trying to demonstrate and illustrate that the people at the school system were bad.
Yeah.
And this was, just neglected. So
Just
we
saying.
had no other course than to go back to a riot. And this is when we met the West.
Right. See, because my feelings were that white people just didn't believe that black people were human. And the more I looked at where we lived, and then I'm saying, no, you don't have to come in there and build this up, but at least you can give us a decent education and let us help ourselves, And every day you look at the schools, nothing. Going to school, 2 shifts, and then you can't take the books home. How can a kid learn?
In
And
school,
we're killing our
school was so
kids,
bad. The teachers, like when I was about 12, I was a little hustler. I used to sell marijuana, things like that. But I was still in school, And I was out all night, so I had some place to sleep in the day, And I couldn't sleep with the guy. I couldn't stay in the apartment I was staying in because I was staying there with a pimp. So I went to school, and I paid the teacher $5 a day to let me sleep behind the blackboard. And I'd sleep behind the blackboard, every day in school. They didn't care, They didn't care. They just they sent you there, they disciplined you, made you stay quiet, fold your hands.
That's
was
the
it.
criteria for
Discipline.
a good classroom.
If you were a nice
Quiet.
guy and you kept your hands
Quiet.
folded and you were
Well,
quiet.
like you learned or not, just quiet.
That's quiet.
Obedience.
Right. They were graduating cats, if you got too big. So the hell with it. If you got too big, really
Too big physically.
Yeah, tall. If you got real tall, they just graduate
you could graduate. if you got 16, if you became 16 years old, you graduate. They just push you right out of school. Just get out and make some more room. And my feeling was when I met DeWitt was, man, shit. Why not? See, like I figured that this city owes the taxpayer something. See. Now, I don't know how this city would justify to the rest of the nation having a lot of kids not getting education, see. But they can justify it as long as they got these buildings here. So I was figuring on burn down every school building in the ghetto. See, then you ain't got to ask for them to build up some more schools. You ain't got to ask for them to open up some more doors. Because, I had read statistics about all these other schools around here that had so many open spaces, and we were so crowded. I figured just burn these down, and they'd have to let you into these schools. And you wouldn't have to wait for them to develop a busing plan. They would have to do it. And the rest of the world would look at them, What did it say, the world is watching like before? And put the eye on them, It was crazy, but it was, this is desperation.
See, but this was something. Now, this attitude has been expressed already. It's been put into effect on the West Side, where guys feel that rather than live in this building, I'd rather burn it down.
Yeah, that's when
when
you
King
start
got
thinking,
assassinated, if you go on the West Side now and drive down Roosevelt, you'll see no buildings there because they're all burned down. And this is still the attitude that the people have.
See, society makes you think it's foolish. I think
I think
it's really crazy to do something like that. But as crazy as it sounds, I would do it. I would really do
And
it.
it depends upon your frame of reference. Like I said before, if you're living in this narrow little 10-block radius and you don't see any way of getting out, you don't see any chances of success, and you really want to live...
There's another narrow frame of reference, too, and that's the frame of reference of people in the suburbs and outside the ghetto who don't see this. That's also a narrow frame of reference.
And there's a community gap, a communication gap
Yeah.
between the two.
So I think as we're listening, it's quite obvious there's a richness, an experience, richness offered through agony and adversity, and also the learning here in the case of Henry Jordan and Alan Evans, who are now, it sounds funny as I say it, Dartmouth College students, Ivy League students. We're listening to 2 Ivy League students talking, really. And there'll be more. It isn't a question of Ivy League, it's not a question either here of a snobbish approach. It's a question of schools and the open window for creative young people, young men, and I imagine young women too here in Chicago, many of whom are prisoners in the black ghetto. The Foundation Years is the group, that's the organization responsible for, you might say, this one open window at least. And obviously, money is needed for the scholarships for so many. There are, indeed, as Henry Jordan and Alan Evans said, there are others too. So many Henry Jordans and Alan Evans around and about with this poetry inside them and creativity to help enrich the society that needs so much of it. Anyway, 110 South Dearborn is the address. The Foundation Years, 110 South Dearborn, room 820, 820. Any amount of donation will be welcome. The phone number if you want to call us, Andover 1900. I'll just repeat the address again. It's the Foundation Years, 110 South Dearborn, room 820. And for information, of course, they're open for all kinds of, if you want information of any sort, they'll be free to give it to you. I'd like to thank Henry Jordan, Alan Evans very much for what you had to say, your thoughts, and just a little insight into your lives, and in that very way, insight into our lives as well, too. Gentlemen, I thank you.
Okay. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do it.